Lynda Kinkade. Welcome to CNN Newsroom. US President Donald Trump is in Scotland right now preparing for his controversial summit on Monday with Russian President Vladimir Putin. It comes after a US federal grand jury indicted 12 Russian intelligence officers for meddling in the 2016 US election. Mr. Trump has blamed the Obama administration for the scandal because it happened before he took office. Well, meanwhile, hundreds of anti-Trump demonstrators have followed the president from London to Edinburgh to protest his visit. And those indictments say that 12 Russian intelligence officers hacked the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's emails to interfere with the election. Well, now top Democratic lawmakers and Republican Senator John McCain are calling for the president to call off the summit with President Putin. Mr. Trump says the summit is still set for Monday. Matthew Chance is live in Helsinki, the site of Monday's summit. He joins us now live. Matthew, President Trump says he will again ask President Putin about any interference in the US election, but he's done that in the past and he's believed Putin's denial. Let's just take a listen to what President Trump had to say back in 2017.
What I said there is that I believe he believes that, and that's very important for somebody to believe. I believe that he feels that he and Russia did not meddle in the election.
Is this time going to be any different?
Well, in normal circumstances, Lynda, you'd think that it would be, wouldn't you? Because there's this compelling evidence that's been gathered by US prosecutors and these 12 indictments that have been made of Russian nationals who are now accused and charged with meddling in the US election. But of course, these are far from normal circumstances. And President Trump has described the allegations of collusion with the Russians as a witch hunt. The Russians have adopted exactly the same kind of rhetoric and language as well. A recent statement from the Russian Foreign Ministry reacting to the indictments called it fake news. They didn't say it was a witch hunt. They have done in the past, as I say, but instead they said it was a heap of conspiracy schemes. And they said the purpose of the story was to spoil the atmosphere before the Russian-American summit. The Russians have also been very careful to cast these allegations of meddling as an attempt not just to discredit Russia on the international stage and to undermine the relationship, the burgeoning relationship with President Trump, but as a political conspiracy put about by President Trump's own opponents in the domestic political arena in the United States. You know, that's language and that's analysis that very much appeals to the US president, to President Trump. And so, yes, there's all this talk of, you know, is it going to be different this time? Is President Trump going to be more confrontational with Vladimir Putin when he meets him here in Helsinki on Monday about this issue of US meddling? But the fact is, the Kremlin and the White House seem to agree on the basis for these allegations in the first place. So it could be something that they can bond over, that brings them together and they can agree on, which is pretty ironic given the circumstances.
Yeah, very ironic indeed. There are calls, obviously, here in the US from both sides of politics for President Trump to stop this meeting going forward. Who has the upper hand here and who stands to gain more from this meeting, Trump or Putin?
Well, you know, it's a difficult question to answer, but certainly from a Russian point of view, I can tell you that the very fact the meeting is taking place is being seen in Moscow as a political victory. Vladimir Putin, remember, has been isolated somewhat on the international stage because of what's been described as Russia's malign activities around the world, from the annexation of Crimea back in 2014 to the alleged shootdown, or the shootdown of MH17, the civilian airliner, on the Russian-Ukrainian border, the support for Bashar al-Assad in Syria, the recent nerve agent poisoning in the United Kingdom as well. This marks a sort of turning point for Vladimir Putin in his return to international diplomacy, I suppose. He's got this one-on-one meeting with President Trump here in Helsinki. That in itself is a victory for Vladimir Putin, as I say. But the Russians are also going to be looking for what concessions they can eke out of this meeting. President Trump has already a few days ago suggested that if President Putin asks him to, he will consider discussing suspending military exercises in the Baltic. And so, you know, there's all sorts of possibilities up in the air. It's going to be a very interesting summit to watch, Lynda.
It certainly will be. And I just want to get back to those indictments for a moment. 12 Russian intelligence officials charged, facing various charges from conspiracy to launder money, to commit computer crimes, to identity theft. What's the likelihood any of them will be brought to justice here in the US?
Oh, well, I mean, I imagine the likelihood of that is zero, in the sense that there's no extradition treaty with Russia. In fact, Russia does not extradite its citizens to any country in order for them to be prosecuted. And so I think the chances of these people being brought to justice in a court in the United States is extremely low, if not actually zero. And so, you know, in that sense, this indictment doesn't serve a purpose in terms of, you know, bringing the actual individuals to justice. It just highlights the detail that US intelligence has gathered, and that the Mueller investigation has gathered on how it actually happened. And what was fascinating about this indictment when you read it is the amount of detail that the Mueller investigation has acquired in what the Russians actually did. And that is quite astounding. And it makes the idea that meddling did not happen, you know, the denial of that, you know, basically very difficult to make.
Yeah, certainly does. Well, we will follow this meeting closely on Monday. Matthew Chance, good to have you with us. Thank you. Well, CNN's Abby Phillip joins me now from Glasgow, near where the US president is staying in Scotland. Abby, good to have you with us. Republican Senator John McCain said Americans should understand that Putin is not America's friend and he should not be the president's buddy. Are the two leaders, President Trump and Vladimir Putin, still expected to meet one-on-one with only translators present?
Well, that's a great question, Linda. We've gotten some conflicting information from the White House on that point about whether or not the president is actually going to meet alone, and if so, why? From what we've heard from our sources, that's something that the president has wanted, that he thinks this is an opportunity for him and Putin to sit in a room together and get to know one another, to have a face-to-face on a number of key issues. But a lot of people, both inside and outside of the White House, including John McCain, are concerned about that kind of arrangement. McCain also in the last day has called on the White House to cancel this meeting if the president is not willing to confront Putin about election meddling. After those 12 indictments came down, there is now a lot of pressure for the president to be forceful on this issue. And while he said he's going to bring it up with Putin in this meeting, he has also said that he doesn't expect Putin to acknowledge that he was responsible for it, and that he doesn't expect to harangue him about it. He doesn't want to make it a sticking point in his meeting. The president is clearly convinced that this is an opportunity for him to develop a potential even friendship with Vladimir Putin. A lot of outside advisors say that's unlikely and frankly naive of the president to believe that that might be possible.
All right, Abby Phillip for us. Good to have you there in Glasgow. We no doubt will talk again very soon. Thank you. I want to go to Edinburgh now. CNN's Phil Black is covering this story from there, where there have been protests again today against President Trump. That baby blimp with Trump in a diaper again on display, and also concerns about a paraglider flying a little too close to the US president.
Yeah, Linda, spirited protests in Scotland over the last 24 hours or so. Where I'm standing now is in a park in the centre of Edinburgh, the Scottish capital, surrounded by thousands of people whose overall message is Donald Trump isn't welcome here. And you're right, you can see over my shoulder, it's impossible to miss. Even as it's being deflated now, that the Donald Trump baby balloon has travelled from London here to Scotland as well. So after flying over London during those protests, it was packed aboard a train overnight, brought up here, and it's been flying here today as well. Its tour of the UK continues. The thousands of people here in the park, they've been marching through Edinburgh this morning in a festival-like atmosphere, I think very similar to what we've seen in London and Glasgow over the last day or so. There have been families, lots of blunt messages on billboards and through chants and through songs. As I say, the overall message is the people here don't agree with Donald Trump, don't welcome him here, and don't agree with his policies more generally. Yesterday at Turnberry, the Trump golf course resort, where Trump is actually staying, a Greenpeace activist performed a very daring action, flying a paraglider very close to the hotel, getting pretty close indeed, streaming an anti-Trump banner behind him. And the fallout from that is that the police and the US Secret Service are now trying to work out who that pilot was and where they are, because there are airspace restrictions in place over the hotel to protect the president. And the Scottish police say that by breaching those restrictions, the pilot of that paraglider has broken the law. Lynda.
Right, okay. Phil Black for us in Edinburgh with thousands of protesters behind you. We will cross back to you again soon. Thanks so much.